Welcome, I am Nonya, your real estate tutoress. On this channel, I bring you the best tips and tools getting your real estate license. I also answer any questions you may have about the process. If you're new here, welcome and do consider subscribing. As you prepare for the Illinois Real Estate Broker examination, there are certain terms that you need to understand. As you've been going through the curriculum, you've learned a lot of words in class, or if you're doing this on your own. And so you need to understand what these words mean and know the vocabulary. In today's lesson, I will be bringing you 30 vocabulary words that you need to know for the exam. What I like to tell my students is don't try to cram these words, try to understand the words. For example, when you were growing up and learning words, right, you would ask your parents or whoever was raising you, what is a car or what is this? And they would try to explain it to you. But if I should ask you today, what's a car? You're not going to give me the actual definition, like in the dictionary, of what a car is. You kind of understand what a car is. And if I use a car in a sentence, you know what I'm talking about. So that's how I want you to memorize these words because, or rather understand these words, because generally the exam is not going to ask you, for example, the definition of real estate is, and then give you some options. What they will do instead is use the word or the phrase real estate in a sentence, and you're supposed to understand what they mean when they use it in a question. All right, so as we go through, I will definitely bring those up and help you understand that as we go. So let's get started. First word is land. Now, land is the surface, anything going down, anything going up. So the Earth's surface to the center of the Earth, and then the airspace above, including the trees, water, and other natural things that you find attached as well. Real estate, on the other hand, is the land plus anything that we humans have attached to it. So think of your house, your sidewalk, your driveway, your fence, those things that we have attached to the land. Real property. Real property is the land, the real estate, plus the interests, benefits, and rights that you have because you own that real estate. Personal property. Personal property then is anything that's movable. Right? We just talked about real property, the things that are attached. Personal are the other things. So your desk, your camera, microphone, your computer, your cell phone, your furniture in the house, those things that don't necessarily get sold when real estate is transferred. Trade fixtures. With trade fixtures, we're talking about things that have been installed by a business owner in a space that they are renting. Those things are always personal property until the lease is over. And because they're personal property, if the business owner is leaving, they can take them out, even if they have attached it to the real estate. For example, if you have a barber shop, all right, they put in sinks, they put in mirrors, they put in the chairs, whatever, and they've attached them to the wall. If the lease is expiring at the end of the month, as long as they pull all those things out, right, it's still their personal property. But once the lease is expired, now it becomes property of the landlord. So with trade fixtures, think about someone who owns a trade, who owns a business. So when you see trade fixtures, just think business owners. Severalty. When we talk about the word severalty, this essentially means how you own real estate. And with severalty, it is one owner. So only one person or one cooperation owns the property. Now, the word severalty comes from the root word to sever. So if you look S-E-V-E-R, to sever, right? Not several, but sever. With sever means to cut off. So you're cutting yourself off from anyone else. So you own it by yourself, free and clear. Tenants in common. With tenants in common, this is a type of co-ownership. So co-owners, more than one owner. Co-ownership that whereby each owner has an undivided fractional interest in the property. And it doesn't have to be equal. It could be, let's say if there's two of us, 70-30 or 60-40, or it could be 50-50, but it doesn't have to be equal. And it could be created at any time. So even my portion, I could give it to my heirs and they will become tenants in common with you. Last thing, it can be inherited. So you can pass it on to heirs and such. If you're getting real estate and no other type of co-ownership is specified, this is the one that will automatically come into play. Joint tenancy, this is another type of co-ownership. In this one, ownership must be equal. It can be multiple people. So if you have 5 people, they all own, equal share, all 5. It's always created at one time on the same legal document. So whenever those 5 people are gaining ownership of the property, that's when we create a joint tenancy. With joint tenancy, if one owner passes, their interest gets transferred over to the remaining people. So we don't have any type of inheritance, but what we have is what's called a right of survivorship. So we had 5 people, one person passes, the remaining 4 now own the entire real estate. One person goes, remaining 3, one person goes, just 2 people, and then eventually one person now owns it. And remember, we already talked about what happens when when one person owns real estate, right? That's called severalty. So as we go from 5 and all the way down to 1, when we get to 1, that person now has ownership in severalty. Right? Tenants by the entirety. This is also a type of co-ownership, but it is for legally married couples and it's recognized in Illinois. All right, so this is how legally married individuals can own their primary residence. And it is a type of joint tenancy, meaning survivorship, right? So if one spouse passes, the other spouse automatically now owns the property. Estate in land. Estate in land describes the degree, quality, nature, and extent of a person's interest in real property. So think about if someone owns it or if they're renting it out or if they have a license to use it. So those are that's essentially all under the bracket of estate in land. What type of ownership or what kind of interest do you have in that real estate? Do you own it? Okay, if you own it, then how do you own it? Or if you're renting it, how are you renting it? What's the lease agreement on your rental? If it's a license, what are the terms of that license? Freehold estate is a type of estate in land and it has to do with ownership. All right, so we just talked about estate in land. Estate in land is the degree of quality or interest that you have. Now freehold talks about ownership. So anything that doesn't have to do with ownership is not freehold. And the other thing to know about freehold, as it says on the screen, is for an indeterminable length of time. So there is no time frame on your ownership. With leasehold estates, this is the right a person has as a tenant, okay, to occupy someone else's real estate for a period of time as specified in the lease, right? So leasehold, just think about rentals. Freehold, think about ownership. Fee simple absolutes. This is a type of freehold. This is a type of freehold estate where you own it free and clear. This is the highest level or right of ownership that anyone can have when it comes to real estate. You own it free and clear and you can do with it as whatever you want, but within the framework of the law. Fee simple defeasible. With fee simple defeasible, this is also a type of freehold estate. However, there is a condition to your ownership. It says there on the screen that it is terminated by the occurrence or non-occurrence of a specific event. For example, the ownership says you own this as long as there is no alcohol consumption on this property. Now, if there is alcohol consumption on the property, you may lose ownership. So that's the occurrence of something. Or I could say, I'm going to give you this property. It's yours as long as you're using it as low-income housing. So let's say you stop using it as low-income housing. Now you may lose ownership of the property, all right? So now the non-occurrence, you're not using it for low-income housing. A life estate. A life estate is a freehold estate that is limited by the life of the owner or the life of somebody else. Example, a father passes on real estate to his son and says, this is yours as long as you are alive. Once you pass on, it goes to your son. So we're keeping this in the family. The life tenant. The life tenant is the person in possession of a life estate. Let's go back to my example. The father gives the real estate to the son. Now the son becomes a life tenant because they are in possession of the real estate. And then the transfer was the life estate says, it's yours, son. When you pass on, it goes to your son. So the father's grandson. So the son in this instance would be the life tenant. Per AUTRE is a French word that means for the life of another. This is a life estate that is for the life of someone other than the life tenant. Eminent domain. Eminent domain is the right of the government to take private property for public use. Of course, the person whose property is taken is compensated for their property being taken, like the value of the property. But this is the right the government has. For example, a couple of years ago in Chicago, they were expanding the O'Hare Airport. And so there was eminent domain. A bunch of people's homes were bought off by the government, whoever they were at that point, and then the land was used to expand O'Hare. Escheatment or escheat. So escheat is the process whereby the county acquires ownership of real estate. In Illinois is the county. So the county acquires ownership of real estate. When a person dies and they don't have a will, they have no heirs. So no will, no heirs, the property escheats to the county where it is located. Testate. This is when a person dies with a will. So you could get a question where they say a person passed testate or a person dies testate. That means a person dies with a will. Intestate, a person dies without a will. Easement. This is the right to use someone else's land for a specific reason, such as having a right of way or for utility lines and things like that. So easement, someone else's property is being used for some reason. Apputenant easement. The word apputenant essentially means like being next to or attached to. For example, if you have an attached garage, right? So the garage is apputenant to the house. Okay, so in an apputenant easement, we're talking about two parcels of land that are next to each other, but they have to be owned by different people for us to have an apputenant easement. Because remember, with easement, we say you're using someone else's land. So with an apputenant easement, you're using your neighbor's land for some specific purpose. Okay, so this is an easement that is attached to the ownership of one parcel of land and allows that owner the use of the neighbor's land for a specific purpose, such as a right of way. So on this slide here, I have a little diagram that shows you what servient tenement is, and on the next slide we'll talk about dominant tenement. So here you see lot A is in front, lot B is behind. Lot B doesn't have access to the public road, so they have to drive through lot A to get to the public road. So this dark thing here is our driveway. The servient is the one being used. So the person who the easement is on their land is servient. So think about it, the person being used, the person who is serving, servient tenement. So in this scenario, lot A is servient, and this is our apputenant easement. It's a driveway from lot B through lot A, getting us to the public road. Therefore, right, the dominant tenement is the neighboring parcel that benefits from the easement. So think about it, the person who is being served, the person who is using the other person, or the person who's dominating the situation, right? That's your dominant tenement. Easement by necessity. This is an easement that's allowed by law because it is necessary. So just think of the word necessity, right? So it's a necessary easement. It's something that we need in order to enjoy our real estate. So going back to this slide, This would be an easement by necessity because there's only one way B can, as of right now, right, that B can get to the public road, and that's through going through lot A. Easement by prescription. This is one that is acquired through a process that is continuous, open, hostile, and adverse. So without the owner's permission, you're using their land for a period of time. Example, let's say that there was a parcel of land that was private owned, but then it takes you to the lake. So you keep going through their land without their permission, kind of trespassing if you think about it, for a period of time. In Illinois, it is for 20 years. So if people are continuously using your land, then they would be able to create an easement by prescription on your parcel of land. So they don't own the land, but they have the right to use your land to access the lake in this example. Easement in gross. Now, when you think about easement in gross, just think about utility companies, power lines, your phone lines, your cable lines that run through people's land, or even like railroad tracks. So this is an easement that's usually created by someone who doesn't live next to you, either a company or an individual, because they need the right, to use your land for a specific purpose. So think about railroad tracks running through someone's land. That would be an easement in gross. Encroachment. An encroachment occurs when part of your property, either a wall, your garage, your fence, or whatever, is crossing the property line. So it is now in your neighbor's lot. All right. That would be an encroachment. So with that, we've come to 30 words. And those are a lot of words. Watch this over and over again so that you can go over these words, review them in your notes, kind of begin to even use them in sentences so that they kind of become familiar to you, and you're not having to like think about the actual definition when you see the word used in a question. I hope this was beneficial to you. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any additional questions, please leave them in the comments for me. If you have certain topics you want me to cover, also let me know in the comments below, and I will do my best to get you those videos. As always, please like this video, share with a friend in your class or someone who may be interested in getting their real estate license. And I will see you in the next video. Just hop onto this next one right here.